than Joe Burrow. He's been hit 36 times and is on a team that is ranked 27th for pass protection. 36 hits. Only players that have been hit more than him are Daniel Jones and Carson Wentz. And those guys are the worst in the league when it comes to turnovers. And Burrow only has 8. It's incredible. And then you look at the fact that they beat the Titans last week. We were ready to crown the Steelers when they beat the Titans. The Bengals beat the Titans by more than the Steelers did. Then you put on top of it the fact that he is dealing with an insufficient defense. They have had a fourth quarter lead in 6 of their 8 games so far this year, and the Bengals have blown that lead because no one gives up more points in the fourth quarter than the Cincinnati Bengals. And already at this point, midway through the season, he's already matched the win total from the team last year. So I understand that the way that we talk about MVP right now is normally about the best quarterback, honestly, on the best team. That's what we did last year. We gave it to Lamar Jackson, and the year before that, Patrick Mahomes. That's kind of the criteria. But if you listen to the actual word, who's been more valuable than Joe Burrow, the rookie quarterback on a truncated offseason, has come in and turned this team into a real contender and knocked off last week one of the best teams, or at least what we thought was one of the better teams in the AFC. I think Burrow is a legit MVP candidate.
I have to tell you, I really like the take. I want to take it and sort of segue it to a slightly different question. And Damien Woody, I will put this one to you. Some people whose voices I respect, including Amy Trask and Mike Tannenbaum, have suggested, as well as Burrow has played, that the amount of punishment that he has taken, all these hits that he has taken, are actually going to be a problem long term, and that the Bengals should consider sitting him because he has been hit so much, and that could be a potential concern going down the road. I know that's a controversial thought, but it's an interesting one. I see Neek is already shaking his head at it. D. Wood, what do you think?
No, I don't. I don't agree with that one. I just think that the more he plays, more experience that he gets. Listen, he's a young dude. I think 23 years old, and yes, he's on a terrible team with the Cincinnati Bengals. But to sit him down, I think would just be doing the whole organization an injustice, because I think the one thing that Joe Burrow has done is he's brought an energy, a hope. I think guys in that huddle look at him and they see that we can win any game with this guy in the huddle. If you as an organization decide to sit this guy down, what are the players going to think about the organization? He's going to get hit, but that would be a bad move by the Cincinnati Bengals organization.
What are you hearing, Dan, out of Cincinnati as far as concern they have for the amount of the beating that he is taking?
Obviously, they would prefer that he not get hit as much, and they think they can improve that. Look, they had to start backup offensive linemen in the game the other day. They actually did pretty well. Some would say better than the starting offensive line has done this year. Burrow's got to get better at obviously protecting himself like any young quarterback would, but they love the kid. And quite frankly, you talk about Domonique's unique perspective, value. What Joe Burrow has brought to the Bengals is some swagger that they absolutely needed. I mean, this is a laughingstock team, and he's in there saying, not only am I willing to play, I'm willing to take some hits for you guys, and we'll grow together. I think it just means a ton in terms of what he's doing.
I agree. Well, look, Dominique, you and I both know he's not going to win the MVP this year, but I really like the take. His name should be in the discussion for exactly the reasons you just gave, and let's see what happens the second half of the season and see how many games they wind up winning. Meanwhile, speaking of MVP, let's talk about the guy who won it last year, because in the most hyped game of the weekend last week, the Steelers handed the Ravens a 4-point loss in Baltimore. Pittsburgh stays unbeaten, and has been the case for much of his career. Lamar Jackson did not come up big in a game against really good competition. Jackson is in fact still searching for his first win against a team that is over 500 this year. He will get the next chance this coming weekend against the 5-2 Colts after struggling in the team's losses to the Chiefs and the Steelers. But the other day, here on this program, Jeff Saturday said 21 of the 22 Ravens played better than the Steelers did on Sunday. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, the 22nd, is the most important one. So, Dominique, when you hear that comment, what do you think?
I think Jeff Saturday is really good at TV, but that's not exactly true. That's a fun way to put it. But I think the reason why they were in the game and the reason why they lost the game is Lamar Jackson. And we all know that this team is built around Lamar Jackson, which includes having some big blocking type receivers like Boykin and Snead. Those guys are really good at what they do in this offense, but I think it does limit the ability of the offense to have big plays. And they aren't having the big plays either in the running game or the passing game that they had last year. If they can find find a way to do that. And I think some of that is on Lamar Jackson. Absolutely. There's some really awful passes and turnovers and decisions he made in that game. But he's also the reason why they were in that game. I think back to when that touchdown got called back. And he went back in the huddle and told those guys, calm down, we're going to score again. And he got him in there again. So it's tough to put it all on Lamar Jackson, but he certainly deserves his fair share of criticism.
Clearly. David, what is your perspective as you watch that game and you watch the development of a guy? Again, he was the MVP and had one of the great seasons of all time last year, but these questions seem to persist. What do you think, David Pollack?
I don't agree with Saturday either. I agree more with Neek. And if you look at the offensive line, by the way, last year when you watched the Baltimore Ravens, they owned the line of scrimmage. And now Ronnie Stanley out for the year. Orlando Brown Jr. banged up. This isn't the same offensive line up front that they can just move people out of the way and the running game be all they need. Another year of studying this system ad nauseum. Lamar Jackson has to get better. He can't fumble the ball so much. He can't turn the football over. He's got to get better at throwing the football outside the numbers. By the way, those receivers Nick talked about, he was talking about bigger wide receivers blocking. You notice he ain't talking about receivers catching the football. He needs some more of those too, hence why Dez Bryant just got signed to the practice squad and is still looking for guys out there. So I don't think they have the best supporting cast around them, and especially now with the offensive line banged up, Lamar's going to have to take his game to a level even better than last year if he wants to cover up some of these holes.
Well, so the question, I guess, of the moment then, Damien Woody, is the same question that we had at the end of last year. Can this team, playing the way it plays, the style it plays, and the quarterback playing the way he plays, can that team win the championship this year?
I think it can win the championship this year because there's no one dominant team. But I think they're trending downward as far as percentage wise. If they will win a championship, I think along the offensive line, I think they've lost a lot of players. Marshall Yonder, who retired, Ronnie Stanley injured. The running game hasn't been the same, Greeny. It hasn't been the same. And when you're not getting the running game going, guess what else that affects? That affects the play-action pass. So everything has a trickle-down effect, and I think that's why when you look at the Baltimore Ravens, even more pressure is on Lamar Jackson, particularly in the passing game, because they've not been able to run the ball as well as they were last year. So unless Lamar Jackson gets a lot better, particularly throwing the ball outside the numbers, I think that's going to be an impediment on the Baltimore Ravens ultimately winning the championship.
Graziano, what do you hear from inside about the concern about all of these big games?
Well, look, obviously he's a young player still, and just because you win an MVP does not mean that you don't have to do more developing of your game when you're a young player. Last year, the offseason program they put in, they thought would elevate their offense. It did. Lamar Jackson exceeded all possible expectations last year. The stuff they tried to do this offseason, it hasn't quite clicked the way it did last year. This is understandable in terms of a young player's development, especially in an offseason that was so unusual as this one. So it's possible we're just looking at a guy who hasn't taken the step that they hoped and expected he would take this year. Still has half a year to do it, and certainly more than enough talent and experience that says that he can.
Quickly, Domonique, championship caliber team this season, Baltimore, yes or no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they have the defense. They save a lot of money on offense. They don't spend a lot on those players, including the quarterback. They've invested it in that defense. I think that they are a legitimate championship caliber team, but obviously they're not the favorite at this point, in my view.
Okay, so we'll leave that there for just a moment. Let me run you through a get up and go here, give you some other news from around the world of sports yesterday. You may have been otherwise occupied. With Andy Dalton out this week, the Cowboys' plans at quarterback remain up in the air for their game against the Steelers. According to our Todd Archer, the plan is to work Garrett Gilbert and Cooper Rush this week with the first team, although Ben DiNucci has not been ruled out completely. Elsewhere, Dodger outfielder Mookie Betts has been named the Gold Glove Award winner this year, his first National League Gold Glove, his fifth straight overall. He's the first outfielder to win 5 or more Gold Gloves since Ichiro